Hello, friends. Thank you for joining me again for another lesson or teaching on fasting. Today, I was reading through Isaiah 55, and it talks about come and drink water. Come ye to the waters, and he that hath no money, come ye, buy and eat. Come, buy wine and milk without money and without price. And I love how it was God not only gives us free water, but He's also offering substantial drinks like wine and milk, things that sustain. These drinks represent spiritual as well as physical nourishment. And He says, "Wherefore do you spend money for that which is not bread, and your labor for that which satisfieth not? Hearken diligently unto me, and eat ye that which is good, and let your soul delight itself in fatness." And I love the English Standard Version says, "in rich foods." They had been spending their resources on things that did not bring soul satisfaction. And so today, for just a few minutes, I want to talk about soul satisfaction. I'm right here at my altar in my room, and I was thinking so much about what fasting does for us. If you look in Revelations at the church of Laodicea, they were a church that were wealthy, they had increased with goods, much pleasure, and yet they were starving spiritually. They were well fed outwardly, but starving in the soul. And I feel like that when we turn our attention to prayer and fasting, we are saying no to this flesh. We are saying we're dying outwardly, but inwardly we're being renewed. We are strengthening that part of us that we cannot see with our eyes. And what happens is that we begin to see clearly what is truly important in our life, and we begin to feel that satisfaction of His presence, and that clarity of the Spirit that we can't see if we are feeding our flesh. Now, I think it's interesting when you have a young child, you can train a young child, and if they never have ice cream, they don't know what they're missing, right? But if they ever get a taste of it, it's over. They're going to love it forever. And so many times we are ruled on our appetites. Our appetites rule, they dictate when we eat, they dictate what we eat. Everything is based on what our appetites want, and we never really get to true hunger. In fact, it's interesting that the American church is so overfed physically and undernourished spiritually that we are so much like the church in Laodicea. They were literally starving while they were feeding their flesh. I don't know about you, but I want to find that time of fasting and prayer that God opens my eyes to see, what am I truly feeding myself? Am I living off the appetites of the flesh, or am I bringing them under subjection to the power of the Spirit? Today, I believe that God would call out all of us to examine our life and say, "God, call me," and just as Sister Kim was teaching us about the call to fast, call me into seasons of fasting on a regular basis so that I know where I'm at spiritually, so that I'm not blinded by the things of the flesh. God has clarity for all of us if we're willing to break down this nature, this selfishness, this self-will of what we want. It's very interesting if you look at Isaiah chapter 53. It's talking about the man of sorrows. It's talking about the coming Messiah, and it says, "Yet it pleased the Lord to bruise him. He hath put him to grief. And when thou shalt make his soul an offering for sin, he shall see his seed, he shall prolong his days, and the pleasure of the Lord will prosper in his hand." God has always used suffering to grow, to cause blessings. And I like to think about fasting as really it's self-infliction. We're putting ourselves. It's not something that life has put on us, but we're putting it on ourselves to suffer and to be to grieve our food. I don't know if you've been on a fast for very long. You do grieve food. You grieve your favorite food. You grieve any food. You're hungry. You're hangry. Whatever. But the truth is that when we will do this to ourselves, when we choose to suffer through prayer and fasting, and again, I'm not saying that prayer is suffering, but fasting is, your flesh is suffering. When we choose to do that, then I believe that the pleasure of the Lord becomes ours. That contentment, that soul satisfaction, those things that money cannot buy, they truly become ours, and then we are feeding the spirit man. I want to finish up by reading the rest of this chapter. Verse 11, Isaiah 53 verse 11, he shall see the travail of his soul and shall be satisfied. There's satisfaction when we choose to crucify ourselves. By his knowledge shall my righteous servant justify many, for he shall bear their iniquities. Therefore will I divide him a portion with the great, and he shall divide the spoil with the strong, because he hath poured out his soul unto death. Now listen what God is saying. He's saying because he's choosing to suffer, because my servant, which was Jesus Christ that came in the flesh and died on the cross, he said, because my servant is choosing this road of suffering and this road of affliction, I'm going to divide him a portion with the great, and he shall divide the spoil with the strong. Because he hath poured out his soul unto death, and he was numbered with the transgressors, and he bare the sin of many and made intercession for the transgressors. Now, we're not Jesus, but when we choose to suffer, when we choose to allow God to do his work in us through the road of fasting and prayer, I believe that God begins to win these battles for us, and he does divide a portion with the great, and he divides the spoil with the strong. There is a blessing when we choose to deny our flesh and take on a spirit of prayer and fasting. I want to encourage you today that if it's been a while since your soul has been satisfied, then maybe it's time to say, God, when would you have me to fast? How long do you want me to fast? Show me your way, and God will show you his way, a better way, a way of fullness, a way of richness in his presence. God bless. Have a wonderful, wonderful day.